Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously immersive microscopic tour right into the bustling metropolis of the cell. If you've ever stopped to wonder how the fundamental machinery of life actually operates at such peak efficiency, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to journey straight into the molecular factories that are literally keeping you and every other living thing on Earth alive right now. Let's get into it. So think about this for a second. What does a microscopic bacteria have in common with a massive blue whale? I know, it sounds like a bit of a trick question, right? But despite the absolutely mind-blowing differences in scale, all life shares the exact same fundamental building blocks. To really understand the whale, you first have to understand the bacteria. All right, let's dive right into section 1, the foundation of life. You know, biological existence is beautifully simple at its core. It's all governed by three major principles of cell theory. First off, the cell is the absolute basic unit of life, period. Second, all organisms consist of one or more of these units. And third, spontaneous generation, yeah, that's a total myth. Life is actually a continuous, unbroken chain of cells, dividing and multiplying over and over. So whether we're talking about a blade of grass in your yard, your golden retriever, or a completely invisible strain of bacteria, they all share what's basically a universal starter pack. They all have a flexible plasma membrane acting as an outer boundary, a thick fluid called cytosol filling the inside, DNA acting as the ultimate genetic instruction manual, and these little guys called ribosomes that read those instructions to manufacture proteins. Moving right along to section 2, the plasma membrane gatekeepers. We have to ask, how does this cellular metropolis actually decide what gets in and what stays out? Well, the plasma membrane is highly selectively permeable. It's kind of like a VIP club. Small, uncharged molecules like oxygen, they get a free VIP pass straight through the wall. But if a molecule carries an electrical charge, passage is strictly prohibited on its own, no matter how small it is. It's going to need special permission to get inside. This whole security system works because of something called the phospholipid bilayer. Think of it like a fluid, two-layered sandwich. The outward-facing heads are hydrophilic, meaning they love water and interact smoothly with it, while the inner tails are hydrophobic. Because of this oily, water-fearing core in the middle, charged molecules just bounce straight off. And crucially, it's super fluid. These lipids are constantly sliding and shifting around, making it a really dynamic, flexible barrier. And this membrane isn't just an empty wall. It's a bustling hub packed with specialized macromolecules. You've got cholesterol embedded in there acting as a buffer to maintain that perfect fluidity. You have proteins acting as dedicated channels to let those charged molecules in or serving as communication receptors. And get this, carbohydrates sit on the surface acting as ID markers. Actually, your specific ABO blood type, that's determined by the specific carbohydrate markers sitting on your red blood cells right at this very moment. Kind of cool, right? Now, because of this strict security, water actually poses a really unique challenge. Atoms naturally want to diffuse from high to low concentrations, but water molecules carry a slight charge. That means they need special help crossing the barrier. This highly monitored diffusion of water gets its own vital classification, osmosis. It's the absolutely critical balancing act that keeps our cells from either violently bursting or completely shriveling up. Which brings us to section 3, a tale of two cells. All life on Earth is divided into two basic cell types, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. The main difference here really comes down to organization. Prokaryotic cells are incredibly simple because they completely lack internal membrane-bound structures, which we call organelles. They are generally single-celled, like bacteria. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are like the complex, multi-room mansions of the cellular world. They're totally packed with specialized organelles, and they make up the complex organisms we know, like animals, plants, and fungi. Looking a bit closer at the simple prokaryote, we see a rigid cell wall for extra protection, and often this whip-like flagellum used for movement. But the real defining characteristic here is the nucleoid region. It definitely contains DNA, but that precious genetic code is just kind of floating openly in the cytoplasm. It's completely unprotected by any sort of inner membrane. Which makes perfect sense when you learn that the word eukaryote literally translates to true nucleus. This is the defining, game-changing feature of eukaryotic cells. They took that incredibly precious DNA and they locked it securely away in its own membrane-bound vault. Let's take a look inside that complex cell in section 4, the endomembrane factory. Right at the center of it all is the nucleus, the master vault. Its sole function is to store and fiercely protect your DNA. And let me tell you, it does not mess around with security. It is surrounded by a nuclear envelope made of not one, but two layers of plasma membrane, and it's reinforced by protein fibers called the nuclear lamina. Absolutely nothing is getting in or out without passing through highly specialized nuclear pores. Now, when the DNA issues an instruction to build a biological molecule, this whole interconnected factory springs into action. We call this the endomembrane system. First, raw proteins are threaded into the rough ER so they can be perfectly folded into shape. Then, tiny bits of the membrane pinch off to form delivery vesicles to transport the cargo. Next, they arrive at the Golgi apparatus, which basically receives them, modifies them, and ships them out. Finally, they reach their destination. Or, if it's just a cellular trash, they get sent to lysosomes, which are specialized vesicles filled with enzymes designed to break down and recycle the waste. It's literally a microscopic assembly line. There is one really important distinction we need to make about the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER. The rough ER is studded with those protein-making ribosomes we mentioned earlier, which gives it a literal bumpy look. But there is also a smooth ER, completely lacking ribosomes. Instead of proteins, it manufactures lipids. It also takes on some highly specialized local jobs, like storing calcium ions for muscle contraction, or literally detoxifying drugs in your liver. All right, our final stop, Section 5, Power, Shape, and Movement. Now, an assembly line cannot run without electricity. So, how many power plants do you think a single eukaryotic cell actually needs? The answer, incredibly, is up to several hundred. I mean, that really goes to show you the massive, sheer scale of energy production happening inside of you right now. Those power plants, they're the mitochondria. Through a process called cellular respiration, they take glucose and oxygen and turn it into ATP, which is the universal energy currency of the cell. But hey, power is pretty useless without structure, right? To keep the cell from just collapsing in on itself, it relies on a cytoskeleton. This is an intricate scaffold made of 3 types of protein fibers: microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and microtubules, and they are all constantly assembling and disassembling just to hold the cell's physical shape. Some eukaryotic cells even use those microtubule bundles to build movement structures so they can navigate their environment. We have short, hair-like cilia that beat rapidly back and forth, which is perfect for little single-celled protozoans swimming around in a pond. Or we have the much longer flagella, which acts kind of like a propeller, famously used by animal sperm cells to reach their destination. Which really brings us to a final, profound question. How are these trillions of tiny, invisible factories operating inside of you, right at this very second? It's wild to think about. Every single beat of your heart, every passing thought in your brain, and every breath you take is driven by the precise, coordinated efforts of these microscopic metropolises. The cell isn't just the foundation of life. It is the ultimate, nonstop engine of your entire existence. So next time you look in the mirror, just remember, you are looking at the combined output of trillions of brilliant little factories. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.